Well folks, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to have another long video for you. There's a lot of hammers out in the shelves out there and I'm going to have to get through a few of them. So this is going to be another hammer repairathon. I'm going to see how many of these things we can get through nice and quickly. Hopefully not have too many services through. I might not put the service ones in the video. If I can avoid it, I might just put them back out to the shelves and wait till I have time to do the service ones. I want to just see if I can get through the quick ones just to get the bulk of the stuff away. So this is going to be a hammer repairathon video, not just Bosch hammers. We'll do a little bit of everything. This is a Bosch GSH 5CE. That's 240 volt. Not all that old, I don't think. Well, 2015. She's 10 years old. Right, obviously service lights on, so it's going to need a set of brushes. Hopefully it's only a set of brushes this thing needs, because she's actually hunting a little bit there too. If it's not the brushes, that could be a controller, but we'll chance the brushes first. Before we do that, actually, it has a service light saying the brushes are gone, so they are worn out, so it has done quite a bit of work. Also just check the hammer, now that it is still running, just to see what she actually has hammering like. If it's hammering good and solid enough, it might need a full service kit. We just put the brushes on to get it running again. Yeah, that's fine. There's no hammer out of it, we just put a full service kit onto it. And if we were doing that, I would have put it back out in the shelves. But if this just needs brushes, we'll just go with this nice simple one. So brushes are worn out. Pull them out. See the wee spring is just about to pop. When they get down so far, this wee lead here is basically just making a connection to turn it on. I see a red light to tell you it needs a service. But if you ignore it and you keep on going, there's a built-in spring and pin. Once this brush wears down enough, you just see it coming through there now. That'll actually pop out and push the brush away from the armature, stopping the machine. So I'm hoping this is all this thing needs. 1617 014 144 brushes. Also just take it outside as well and give it a blow with the compressor, just to get rid of some of the dust inside of it before I put this cover back on. And that'll get rid of the light, but will it also cure the hunting? Let's find out. Spot on. That runs a treat, no more hunting. Right, we know she's running now, surface lights off, good brushes on her, and she actually hammers. But one other thing I am just going to do with this, simply because it is 10 years old, and I already know this can cause a problem. I'm just going to check what grease is on this head. Probably shouldn't be doing this, but hold it up just in case it is oil already. Yeah, grease. Right. This is not something you normally do or supposed to do, but it's what I would do for some of these here Bosch hammers. The grease is great for keeping the O-rings running properly. They last longer with grease, no doubt about it. But as you can see from there, the grease also becomes thick and gets thrown off the gears. So these here over time will just chew through the gears very, very quickly. If we're getting any sort of heavy work, the grease gets thrown away, especially if we're using it down the way. The grease all migrates down on here into the hammer, and nothing gets left on these here gears. So eventually they start to strip out. When they strip out, this here gear here, the small one, that's the top of the armature. If it's gone, this crank one will be gone as well. That crank costs about €50. That armature costs about 200. So when that happens, generally all the bits of the gears and the grease, it'll need a full service kit at another 50 or 60 euro. That repair is going to be costing about 300 in parts, plus your labour and VAT. That there just ain't worth it, to be quite honest. So to save it from potentially stripping them out, what you can do is put on Bosch oil instead. The older GSH 5 hammers had an oil in it, not a grease. Now the oil will affect the O-rings. You'll have to service this, or at least change the O-rings more often than the grease. But the oil keeps the gears lubricated, so they last. You might have to get it serviced once or twice extra, but more than likely this will run on for 20 years instead of just 5 or 10 years. So that's what I'm going to do with this thing. I'm going to put grease or oil into this here. Not going to clean it out. All that's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. Thing's still hammering. Just want to get a bit of oil into that just to help them gears. I might just give the back of this thing a wee clean down, just get rid of this here dust. Now, this grease and dirt over here is actually just from the breather hole here in the plug. There's a little hole going into the gearbox to release pressure if it gets too hot. So that's the side, and this is getting a good bit of hard work. The grease is actually weeping out of here. So that is just where the grease and the oil, the dirt's coming from. The dust is just sticking to that. So I'm not going to wash it out any more than that because it doesn't really need it unless you're actually servicing the thing. This is just to help protect these gears for a little bit longer. Tap that up. This is the Bosch 019 oil. So the older ones would have taken this. Just have that up to the top of the gears, it'll do fine. It's just when you're working with these for long enough, you start seeing the same ones coming on for the same things. These newer ones with that grease, they're getting heavy use. They do start coming on with them gears stripped out. But the older ones with the oil just keep coming on after 20 years, getting the odd little service, and they just keep on running. It's not like the oil seal on top of the armature is any different. Different material for the oil or the grease. The exact same oil seal. It's going to do the exact same job. So unless the grease is already leaking onto the armature, it'll still keep on the oil as well. That's her. That'll keep her hitting and stop the gears from burning out. Because this would be very popular hammer, at least around here anyway. You'll be getting these things on all the time for demolition, for boys doing chasing or something. They're a nice size 5 kg hammer only, that you can easily work away with if you're working overhead or at the side of a wall or something for chipping. Good machine for it. They always were a good machine, but that grease is just one of the things that lets it down now today. Like I say, it stops it from needing the service as often, but that's not much of an advantage if it wears out the gears. So that's her up and running again with just a set of brushes. Next up, we'll try an Old Faithful, an 11E. Hopefully this will be a simple one. She's got no power anyway. It's always a good sign for a simple fix. Whether brushes or lead. Looks like a lead. Nothing. Completely broken. Now this thing looks old and beat up, but it's not that old. 2021. It's only 3 years old, but obviously it's been rolling around the back of a van somewhere. It's getting all scuffed up, giving it this aged patina look, which is actually not that old. One bolt missing as well. Let's see if we can get a replacement for that. Switch is starting to wear out, the slide switch, but it'll still function. It's only the bearing getting stuff. Simple as that. That's her, with a nice simple fix. One new lead, which sounds fine otherwise. Next up is a Bosch GSH 8/45D. Wonder if it'll be as simple as a plug. Something rattling around. Probably just a loose screw inside. Right, that's all kinds of gone. That's a total lost cause. I'm not going any further with that. Spluttering and sparking. I know it sounds like there could be brushes gone, but that armature is actually gone too. On top of that, you can hear the gears clicking away up in there. This thing's what? 2019. In other words, the eccentric gear up in here has failed, broke the gear teeth. They've smashed up and destroyed the gears on the armature. The armature is also now burnt out. So this thing is going to need armature, €200, a new eccentric gear, another €100, plus there's bits damaged inside, so it's going to need a service kit. That's another €80, plus grease and whatever else is actually broken inside. Bearings are also going to be separate from the service kit and the needle bearing up on top. So that is getting onto about a €400 bill just for the parts. In other words, that thing ain't going to be worth fixing. This is looking like the same sort of story as the last one, the Makita. Yeah, I would say these two, this and the other Makita one, or maybe an auction job or something like that there. These things have been lying up a long time. And that does not fill you with confidence. What is that meant to be for? I hope that was not used in the hammer. A big 41mm impact, deep impact socket welded on to an SDS end. What are we using that for? In other words, if we're using this as a drill for driving a big socket like that, the clutch could be got in this thing. But as you can see, it's definitely not been used in a while. She's got a pass in 2004, which is 21 years ago now, since this thing had that writing put onto it, whatever that was. That was some sort of a safety pass or something. The year of her is actually 2021, so 24 years old this thing is. Let's see what's wrong with her. Yeah, again, might be simple. This is the old Bosch GSH 7/DE. Very good hammer they were, but this trigger did always give a little bit of trouble. This is a trigger handle set inside this handle, and it's a lever pushing a switch down here. Sometimes they just become slack or expand or move or something, and they just no longer engage the switch. So this could be a simple little fix. These would have been very good hammers in their day. Quite reliable as well. Still get them in the odd time for a service and that. But when they're this age, that is the #1 problem. So this is just not going on far enough. So this is the automatic on for hammer only mode. She's obviously on drill mode. Covered in grease as well, because I think someone bust in the box itself. So I can either replace this here handle or just glue something onto this here switch. Get a little bit of plastic and a bit of super glue, glue something on just to pack it out that little bit more. So whenever you pull the trigger on the handle, it moves this lever in just a little bit further. That's all you need to do. All I'm going to use is just a plastic packer, just a standard packer, just cut and sand to the size. I'm just going to put on a little bit of super glue, so make sure you don't glue yourself to it. It's very easily done. And just for a quick bond, a little bit of miter fast activator. Hopefully that should be enough. Now as well, you can replace this here trigger, but you can't actually replace it on its own. You have to buy it along with this whole handle. This is just one complete kit, and it costs about 50 or 60 euro. So kind of expensive to replace it whenever you can just stick something on with a bit of glue. Very, very high-tech repair, this one. Just make sure it works here first. What'll be wrong with that? Might be a cheap fix. Saves the customer 50 euro for a part. And it does the exact same job. If you put on a piece that's actually too big, by the time you screw that handle on, it actually might engage the switch. All you have to do then, just get a belt sander, a wee file sander, and actually file off the plastic a little bit, just so you can put the handle on tight without switching it on. And also, hammer only mode then should also just lock on. Hopefully that's all that's wrong with it now. Give it a wee quick test just to make sure. That's it. That's all that's wrong with it. It's running perfectly otherwise. One 24-year-old Bosch GSH 7DE that could easily have been lying up for the last 10 or 15 years, up and running again with a little piece of plastic glued onto the switch. Now another Bosch 11E. This one is in better condition, but it's a younger machine. 2018. What's wrong with this one? Same thing again, just another power cable. Why'd that come off so easily? Yeah. Catch is missing there. Bearing's not great, but slack fit. We'll just change that too. And again, 2 screws missing at the top. Never understood why these 2 are always the ones that are missing. I don't know if they just get lost or they think there's a machine screw that came from somewhere else. I don't know. Always those 2. It's a great wiring job in that one, look. Stripped all the way back, look. As long as it doesn't touch. Grommet's gone too. We'll just replace that. See, that was just a patch job before. Yeah, it's a little bit short, so that was probably shortened before already. We know at the beginning it sounded alright, so we know at basically just needs a new lead. Also just run it when it's running, test the hammer, and that should be her good to go as long as she's hammering alright. Now these replacement ones I just use M8x30s, I think they are. These are actually stainless steel button heads. A little bit expensive to use stainless, but we have these in stock in the shop, so they cost 10 or 20 cent each. Buy them screws in from Bosch, maybe it could cost them what, 80 or 90 cent each, so it actually just works out cheaper to use stainless ones. No, also forgot, need to replace that. Now there is two versions of the actual slide switch. The grey one's for this machine, the black one is just for the modern one. They're different part numbers, but they're basically the same price and do the exact same thing. You can use either one, there's no actual difference in them. So all it is just a slide plate, slides back and forth with a bearing on it. Just for starting, this here lever here. That's her. Another 11E, just needing a new cable. You'd be surprised how often you get a machine in just for a cable. Now, I know a lot of people will say, why doesn't the customer just change the lead himself? Surely they'll know. Fair enough, it's just one customer who owns the machine. They generally do. But a lot of these machines can actually come from a bigger company or something. Maybe employees just aren't allowed to tamper with machines or change power cables for insurance or just work policies. Generally for that sort of stuff we get them in for repair. Otherwise you get them in from big contractors and that. Maybe just an apprentice or somebody who's actually using the machine. Stops working and they just hand it into the office saying it's not running. It builds up so many machines, then they get sent in for repair. It belongs to one person though. Generally they'll have a go at fixing themselves, or if it's doing something like that there where it's starting and stopping, might obviously seem like a lead, they'll just send it in as well to see if it can be fixed. But this one, just a cable and a slide switch, which is up and running. Another 11E. This one's doing nothing. Oh, this might have been opened before. Normally they're quite tight. No, it's not the brushes. The bearing's okay. So I'm going for the brushes in this one because it seems older. I'm guessing it is older because it's from an old hire shop, Q Hire. 2011 machine, 14 years old. The old flathead screws. So this one coming from a hire shop. Would have seen quite a lot of work. Now, if you're wondering why a hire shop isn't fixing their own, it's because this is an ex-hire shop. It's one of the old machines they had in stock and sold off. Probably got replacements on. I know it's an ex-hire shop because that particular one is no longer here. They've closed that branch down. So again, a lead. At least it's an easy fix again. It suits me today. Just in case it's a loose wire, but also I'm going to keep that plug. These things have been around for about 25 years at least. So you get them flat head screws, the older ones like this, and modern ones then. You also get torque head screws, exact same machines, just the screws are different. If you look up the actual type number of this here machine, or the model of it, GSH11E on the Bosch website, probably give you about 20 or 30 different types of it, but only small variations in them all, basically just from different countries and that as well. There's actually very little difference in them. If you go to the actual GB ones, there's maybe two. That's basically the old and new and a few different screws on it. Also, again, need a grommet. Honestly, this game can be a wee bit funny sometimes. You'll be sitting working here all week and you might change maybe 1 or 2 leads. Now today, that's 3 leads already. You could easily, some random days, finish up at 6 o'clock and I could be standing on a pile of old cables. Sometimes you get nothing, no repairs on for a cable. Other days it's just nothing but broken cables. I actually buy this cable in 100-meter reels. Normally it lasts a few months. Sometimes it can only last a week. Just depends the way the machines are coming on. So they're feast or famine when it comes to power cables. Luckily today it's more leads, which means I can get through more quicker. And with this being an ex-hire machine, don't go looking for more problems. I was in for a broken lead, just change the lead. If you go poking and looking for anything else, I can guarantee you, you will find it. So get it running, that'll do. Thing's done a lot of work. You don't want to be too picky about how it's running. As long as it's working, that's the main thing. But by the looks of it, this has been done before, because that bearing on the bottom has already been changed. Everything else does seem to be okay. I should also just make sure she is hammering, and we'll get her out the door. Now you can hear the wear in that one. See, if you kept going now and kept looking, you'll probably find the top of the armature and that crank gear are badly worn or worn on. Like I say, she's an old ex-hire machine, so she's done a lot of work. You could be stripping this down, taking that out to check the bearing up in here as well, but them gears will be worn. You're not going to put the new armature into this here. Servicing it is not going to quieten it down. They're still going to be worn, but they might be worn. They'll keep running on until eventually the gears strip out completely. That could be a month's time, it could be 10 years. You just do not know. She might sound bad, but as long as she hammers, she can keep on working. That's her. Another 11E, needing a lead. Now, another Bosch. This one is fairly fresh and quite an obvious problem. Grease. She's got a grease leak or an oil leak back here. Now this thing is actually a 2024, so that must be warranty, I would imagine. Unless it was bought in January 2024, but I wouldn't imagine so. I would say this one is a warranty one, going by the year, but I haven't got any paperwork or anybody's told me that it is a warranty one. But a 2024 it must be, so I'll treat it as a warranty one for now. Doesn't sound bad. And it does hammer. So this could be simple, or it could be something. There's actually a hole in the gearbox up here, a bleed hole, for the grease and air to get out. Pressure builds up. It could simply be that. Just depends what way this man was using the hammer. If he's been using it overhead, especially for a couple of hours, the grease is just pouring down to the back. It could start leaking out there. We'll just check here and see. We'll have to clean it up anyway. So behind this here, see this wee felt packer here. There's actually a hole straight under the gearbox. Has to have a hole. If this gets hot, it could build up pressure, so has to be a way to release some of the pressure or the grease if it needs to. So it looks like it might have come from there. Everything else is looking okay. Alright, it's leaked all the way down onto here, look. It's all the way down on there. Right, may as well just pull this out of the motor housing, give that a good clean. Most of the grease has come out anyway, so we're going to have to top it up as well. This one in a quick fix, but it might just be an easy fix. Take all that out, pull back the brushes, have to take off the side handle, I'll have to give us a wee tap with a hammer just to separate things out. It should come apart fairly easy because it is fairly new. Get yourself a lump hammer or a mallet, one of these dead blow hammers. Something soft anyway, don't use the actual steel because you're hitting the aluminium housing here. Give it a few taps. It's just to get this bearing out of that there housing. Grease is all the way down in here as well, and up here on the handle. So we're going to have to clean all that out. And clean that. And clean all of this. She made a right mess. It's actually a lot of grease. I wouldn't have expected that much to come out. I'll give it a clean down anyway and just check to see if it could have leaked out from anywhere else. Never know, it could be a crack in this gearbox housing or something. Yeah, it's a lot of grease. Now this can be awkward to clean, because you also want to keep the inside of the gearbox clean and grit free. So you basically have to clean it upside down, so all this grit you're skating off doesn't go inside the gearbox. Because especially if this is just a customer's machine sent in for repair, you don't want to give them a service bill on top of it, because you've got grease in the gearbox and then you have to wash the whole thing out. Now this one, if it is a warranty, probably could just strip it down and put a service kit in and just do regardless, do whatever. But I'm not 100% sure if it is. I have no paperwork to say that it's a warranty, so I can't really take the risk. Maybe he bought this second hand of somebody else. Maybe there was no receipt or docket for it and it's not covered. I don't know. Normally if it's a warranty, they're very quick to tell you that should be repaired under warranty. So we'll just assume it's not, but fix it up just as good without doing a whole service on it. Gotta blow the compressor. I've had to take the handle off of this thing as well, because it's all leaked down and behind. It's on a right bit of a mess. Now the field and the kerosene won't matter at all. Field's all potted or resin dipped anyway, but it is all over the electronics. But again, the electronics is all sealed up. I mean, it was covered in grease, dirt and oil, but kerosene's not going to do it any harm. It's into every little nook and cranny, and it can be an absolute torture to get off properly. Be down on here and all as well. See what I mean? Gets on everywhere. As for the handle itself, I have to just take out the switch and separate it, because it's all the way down here on the controller itself and all the way down the back of the handle. So it's just a bit of a mess. Picking that out is the only way to get on and get it cleaned properly. So I might as well just do it right now. This won't matter about the kerosene. Like I say, it's all potted up. You don't want to soak it, you don't want to put it into a bath of it, but a light splash, rub with a brush, will be alright. Right, there's a lot more cleaning than that. than I thought there was going to be. It all leaked down here and got into every little nook and cranny. Bit of a torture, but she's cleaned up now. Okay, it didn't get down into the field, took it off just to check. I'd only just sat up here. Now, the fault, I don't think it was that. There's too much grease for it to have been that there. It can weep a little bit, but it's not going to pour stuff out. Housing's okay. The gear housing up here is alright. That hasn't cracked. So that only leaves the oil seal. Which is the most likely cause for that amount to come out. And there you go. And there's the evidence. She was kinked there, look. So this should be coming around nice and smooth and up a nice smooth arch here. Same as this side. This side's all kinked, look. So that wasn't sitting in right. So the grease actually got out from here. Yeah, you can see there, look, that was pushed over like that. So in other words, left a big massive gap for the oil to come out, or the grease. In other words, it's actually a manufacturing fault. That's why she leaked the grease. Luckily enough, no parts needed, just a new oil seal. So I know there's nothing else wrong with her. Get her put back together again now. New grease. I'm not going to use the grease. I'm going to do the same as the last one and just put oil onto it, because it'll actually help them gears. And a wee bit more confident putting the oil on, knowing it wasn't coming out through here. Because obviously oil get out a lot more easier than grease. You wouldn't want to just only fill this with oil. It's not like you can just take out the grease and put only oil on. The oil's only there to add to the grease to help thin it out a little bit. Because if it was only oil, it would obviously start seeping out of here a lot easier. These weren't designed for the oil, they were more designed for the grease, so you can't just change them over completely unless you're to change that head, obviously. Right, let's get the rest of her back together again. The awkward bits first. Stick that stuff in there. This is for your switch. Easier to put it onto the motor housing first, and then put your handle back on. Just make sure these leads here are out either side. Polarity doesn't matter, because this is just a motor spinning. Change polarity, it'll just spin the other way probably. Which won't matter because it's just spinning an armature anyway, or spinning a piston. Direction doesn't matter, it's going to do the same thing. Grey lead is for your service light, which goes onto the brush lead, and these two wrap around, one there and one over here. And obviously you have to have your armature on first. Bearing in this is still good, still basically brand new. I'll tighten that on. Just get this half ready to run. That's that bit. Little plastic boy goes on the end here. That's what catches the two screws at the back of your handle here for securing the top. Plastic cover for there. And we can put this onto the hammer. It should go on easier than it came off. I'm also going to put a little touch of Loctite onto these screws because they come out kind of easily. Normally they're very, very tight. I'll put a little bit of Loctite just to help them. Just make sure they're going onto the same thread again. Now, that's the hammer. Piston gauge goes on top. Just pushes on. Now I just need a new oil seal. Hopefully, this is all she's going to need. If you're in any doubt, you can put a little bit of gasket seal onto there as well, because there's a big deep groove in it. Sometimes you can take these out, like this one. She's a little bit kinked or misshapen, because these are moulded to this exact shape. Or if they're twisted round, they can sometimes want to pop out again. If it doesn't like to sit in exactly, you can put a little bit of gasket seal on just to help glue it down in place, basically. But this one should be alright as well. If you put it on and they're lifting up here and keep folding out, is because the actual seal's expanded and no longer fits. You want a tight fit, because as you can see, there is a big gap between the bottom and the top, so this is compressed quite a bit. So any wee kinks could cause a leak. I could put on the Bosch grease, which is 015, but I'm going to use this oil. Just to give the gears better protection. The grease keeps the O-rings better, but the oil keeps the gears better, which is more expensive to change, so try to protect them a little bit more. If you only use the oil, it will weep out a little bit through this hole. Also, don't forget your actual felt sleeve on this too. That's just sitting on there. That's only just to catch any grease that does weep out. But everything else in it, the actual oil seal down here and everything, it's all the same, doesn't really matter. It's not going to need any different oil seal to hold the oil instead of the grease. Now, yeah, stick that on after. Make sure the oil seal is definitely seated this time. Because this time, with oil on it, we're definitely going to know very quickly what's got a leak. Same as the other big ones, just give them a wee start. Make sure they're going in right. Finishing touches now. Lastly, the rear handle and the oil seal again. Pop that on there now in the handle, hold it in place. Now, that's sure a lot tidier looking. No more leaking grease. Hopefully it'll stay that way. Sounds good. Look at That sounded good at the beginning. That's her. One nearly brand new Bosch hammer GSH 5CE with a faulty seal from factory causing an oil leak. All washed out, cleaned out, new oil put on with a new oil seal, all ready to go. We'll find out from the customer if it's actually under warranty or not, but either way it's not that expensive in repair anyway. Next up, in between all the Bosch hammers, we have a Milwaukee. This one is a K500S. Now, let's see what's wrong with this one. Right, she's a little bit arky sparky, but luckily it's only coming from one side, and you could hear it starting and stopping there a little bit too, as if something was losing contact. Might just be a set of brushes in this one. Sparking down this end. And she looks like that's the culprit. It's all black there instead of shiny. It's all tapered over to one side. The brushes are just about gone too. That one's about to poplar. So these are an awkward set because the lead for the red service light, it's a big massive long lead, goes all the way up on here. So you're going to have to modify a different set if these go, or you're going to have to get the Milwaukees. It's better just use the genuine Milwaukees, it's easier in the long run. I'm trying to modify a different set, because most boys that do it badly. The actual brushes themselves are actually quite thick, and most other brands they're just too narrow and they don't fit correctly. You're better off with the Milwaukee ones. Like before I close this up or put this lead on properly, I'm just going to test this with a new set to see if it's sparking still, because I have to open the handle to change this lead or to change over the new brush holder. Also, this needs a new cable. That's obviously broken on there, so to change the cable, don't want to change the cable and then put on a set of brushes to run it to find out the actual armature's gone and it's still sparking badly. It's not worth doing. So we'll run it with a cable like this, just with the other brushes put on, to get it to run to see if it's sparking still. So you're needing them. This is the brushes you're needing: 4931, 3981, 32. And they're costing about €18 plus the VAT. I don't carry many Milwaukee parts, but I do carry these. See what I mean with the long wire for the actual service light. Let's just give that holder a little quick rub. Leave that hanging loose for now. It'll run without that lead. It's only to turn on a light to tell you to service the machine. And there's nothing on this one then, it's just a plain lead. Now, see if she still arcs and farts now. there you go. A little bit of arcing, but not much. That little bit of arcing is probably just the brush is bedding in. So the armature's actually fine. Looks bad when it first ran, but that's all it is. Just a worn out set of brushes. Now we know that's okay. Go ahead and change the lead. And fit this wire. So you have to open all this just to change a set of brushes. Pull that old one out and get your new one threaded up in there. You can see why somebody wouldn't be a fan of this particular hammer. Good when they're working, but they had a few faults with them as well. This was one 2018. So the actual tool holder in these in the past would have been breaking in half. They weren't exactly strong enough for the job. It was welded together and had a tendency to break. But I think they've cured that problem now. I don't think it's the same thing. Still have to go to all this hassle to change the brushes. Keep your grommet. Now, make sure I'm there full. Put your little lenses back in again. Remember the first thing you forget. Make sure we're all in place. Trigger button on, little rubber sleeve or foam sleeve sits on here. There's one on all of them. No, sorry, that one's up here. It's a white one down on this side. Clip that wire up here. Keep it out of the way. Should be good to go. Hopefully that's It's a nice quick and easy fix for this wee Milwaukee. No more spluttering and farting. Now make sure she actually hammers. And that's her. One set of brushes and one new cable. And that's her up and running. Now, another 11E. This one's running. Right, don't know about that one. She's running, but she's making a very bad slapping sound back here. Not like the normal hammer sound. Seems a wee bit too rough actually. We'll test her here. I don't know. There's definitely something going on with that hammer, but I don't know if that's definitely what it's been left on for. There's no description on the machine. There's no obvious fault. Definitely is hitting too hard up here though, because when she actually slaps, it's not just that you're getting vibration through the machine. You can actually feel the whole machine being lifted and thrown back, as if the striker's hitting and actually lifting the whole hammer up, as if it's got too much impact. So we'll open her up and just check in here to see if maybe this damper's gone or something. Now this one ain't young, she's what? Well, 2014. She's 10 years old now. But once you're on and you got them broke, they generally come out quite easy. There could be nothing wrong here. Just see if there's anything in the grease, like grit or anything. Broken plastic. Doesn't appear to be. It's very heavy grease. This is the bit I want to see. It's not that anyway. It's a little deformed, but not that much. This is actually the damper between the actual striker here, bolt, and the hammer. So this will be pushing, this will be on a spring back here, pushing this lever. It'll be pressing against this here striker bolt, keeping it forward. So as you put your chisel in, it compresses this here. I was thinking that might have been gone because she was compressing on, but going on too far maybe. But that's not it. It's actually not looking all that bad otherwise. Normally this would be full of grease. That did come out very easy. Maybe it is. It's just as simple as that. O-ring's gone. It's worn, it has a flat edge. That might be all it is. So what's actually could be just happening is as the pistons come back and forth, sucking and pushing this back, because there's no seal, it's just flapping back and forth. It's not getting the compression correct, and it's not keeping a proper air gap. So instead of it just going back and forth like this and hitting this here striker bolt, it's got too big a gap because there's no seal, so it's probably sitting too far forward and just moving a little bit down here. So the piston is probably slapping it too hard into the actual striker, or it's just the fact that it's facing down and its own weight is also adding onto it. So this might just get away with a simple service. The question is, how far do I have to go with it? Check the brushes, and if they're gone, we'll just put on a service pack. Well, that hasn't been opened in a while. The brushes are still halfway or near new. We'll just do a wee repair job. Handle off to get on up here. The brushes are basically alright. A little bit of wear, but not much. But that bearing's gone, so we'll change that. We'll not put on a whole service kit into this. We'll put the O-ring on for the piston and the striker, and we'll put a new bearing on here. I would say we'll check that needle bearing as well, just in case. Generally, if the brushes are still okay, not even halfway worn, I wouldn't put on a full service kit, because the brushes are a big part of that price. And to be honest, the service kit in most of these are just a few extra wear and tear parts that aren't all that essential to replace. It's mainly the brushes and the piston and striker O-rings that need to be replaced. She's 10 years old, but she hasn't done all that much work. Look. She's done a bit of work, she's a wee bit bedded in there, but she's certainly not worn out anyway. Always check this here sleeve for any wear in case that needle bearing's failed and worn it away. That one's alright. But the brushes are okay, you can get away with just O-rings on the piston and striker, that'll get her going again. Every other thing is just things that you can nearly reuse again. They're just sealing up the machine and they generally don't fail, so don't worry too much about them. I'll pull this head off as well. Right, original Bosch grease. That's the old yellow stuff. So this has never been serviced before. I wouldn't say so anyway. Now, that's her all washed, cleaned and dried, ready to go. And surprisingly enough, after actually washing this all down, we can actually see why it failed now, why it was stopping the O-rings are starting to wear. It's not from overuse or misuse, it's actually from no use. Funnily enough, these here, just like an old diesel engine, kind of have to be used and abused a little bit to keep it running right. They're for work and they need to be worked. So no use can be just as bad as overuse, to be quite honest. This thing here, after washing it out, you can see it's actually done no work at all. That's one of the reasons I'm not going to change this needle bearing, because it hasn't really been used. You can tell by the actual armature. This thing is what, made in 2014, so she's 15 years old and it hasn't seen all that much use. That's been barely used. The brushes have been barely used. Now you can't go by just the brushes because obviously they can be changed easily. But the bearing on the armature, that was still the original Bosch bearing. Normally, if you're changing the brushes, you'll be changing that bearing as well. And most places don't fit that Bosch one. They normally fit a rubber seal like this here. Even myself, I'm a Bosch agent, but I still put on a rubber bearing onto this here, or own one, not the Bosch one. Not that the Bosch one's any good, it's just most people don't bother ordering them. You just use a general bearing for it. We just use a FAG ones here. So that has been barely used, and everything else in it has been barely used. What's happened is the grease that was in it, as you can see when I opened her up, it was still yellow down here and unmarked, but all up here was all burnt, all black grease. This thing, over 15 years, has only been used occasionally and for very short periods of time. So the grease over the time has gotten hard and congealed and stuff. When it was run for maybe 5 or 10 minutes at a time, it's probably all this work this thing's really done at a stage. The grease has just been thrown off to the side. It has never got hot enough to heat up the grease and melt it to get it moving around again. It's only ever been used in short bursts. So the grease just kept getting thrown off and never back on. So eventually these O-rings started to dry out and wear on this pipe and everything. Putting a shoulder on the O-rings and wearing them out. Even the piston, barely used, but still it's no longer a tight fit. It's not worn out, it's not slack, but it's not new. Normally you wouldn't even need to change that piston. It's only when they get extremely old and worn out you'd be changing the piston or the crank or the conrod, but they have seen wear simply because the grease has come off them and they've been running without it, so they start to wear out a little bit. Don't need to change them. The actual pan actually sits inside the hammer pipe, so it's not going to come out anyway. But that is the problem. No use. You can tell something by the grease down here. Normally these things are 10 years old. The grease is just black throughout. It doesn't stay clean down here. So that there tells you it wasn't used all that much, and that's why it's actually failed. Get them out, get them used, and you are using them, get them heated up to get the grease moving through them. Because if it gets old like that there, it just gets hard and doesn't move around at all. So because of that, the only thing we should really need for this is 2 O-rings. Don't need to put a service kit on because the brushes are alright. To be honest, there's nothing really else on this warren. These here don't come in a service kit anyway, but because she hasn't been used that much, it doesn't need to be changed anyway. That needle and seal will be fine. Plus these ones are fine as well. These are still yellow grease on the inside of them as well. Apart from that, these 2 O-rings will get it hammering again. All the other stuff will be fine. Even the felt sleeve, no grease has come onto that at all. Normally this will be saturated in old grease, but that's still clean basically. So that will be fine to reuse, as well as all the other seals, just for keeping the grease on. So I'll get this back together again now with some new O-rings and get her up and running. But it's not often you see that. An expensive machine like this coming on that's just not been used enough. Now I know there's been quite a few of these Bosches in this video, 5s and 11s, but around here these are the most popular machine. Around here everybody has at least one Bosch hammer. They're probably the most reliable and probably the most affordable as well. So if you go to any worksman's van, you're generally going to find one of these here, Bosch GSH 11E or a Bosch GSH 5 or GBH 5. Everybody just seems to have them, no matter if you're just doing wall chising, or an electrician or a plumber, generally they'll have a Bosch 5. For builders doing demolition, anything like that there, even just boys doing fencing, for taking out old concrete posts and that, will have something like this, a GSH 11E. Even if a man has spent 10 or 20 grand on every brand new cordless tool on the market and have completely kitted out with one brand, whether it be DeWalt, Milwaukee or Makita, I guarantee you, you'll still find a Bosch GSH 11E in the back of the van as the spare. These here, they've been around for 20-25 years. They were always just a workhorse, so everybody seems to have them. So that's where you get so many on one video like this. What I will do before I put that on, let's just grease that bearing actually. Have it washed out, so I do not want it going dry. Get a wee dab of grease on the actual bearing itself. Easier if you do this before you put the head on. Obviously after washing it in the kerosene, it'll have removed all the grease in the needle bearing, so you need to put a little bit back in, because not a lot of the grease from the gearbox gets down to the needle bearing. Some gets down, but not a lot. And this is the main reason why we're not putting on a full service kit, because these brushes aren't all that worn. They'd be the main reason why you'd put on a service kit. If they're worn out, you would just use the whole kit. Kit costs about €45. But if you don't need the brushes, you can do without. Replace the two O-rings on their own, only costs about €10 or €12. So you're saving around €30 in parts. Just this bottom half closed up. Now, get this stuff ready. Cleaned out this head as well, just washed out that end. Didn't strip apart the whole head of it. Now grease, I get asked this question all the time. I'll be using this here on the O-rings and that. This is the Bosch heavy grease, this is the 001 stuff. Not technically for the hammers, but I just put them on the O-ring because it gives a better seal length to start up with, and on all the bearings and gears just for initial startup. But I get asked about grease all the time, so I'll go through this again. But I'll be using this is this here grease here, the 015. Buying it is expensive. This here costs around €45 for a tube of this, 225ml. That grease there. So this is what's recommended for these Bosch GSH 11E hammers, or most Bosch hammers that take a grease and not an oil. So it's a nice light white grease. Great for this here because it keeps getting moved around. So that's what I always use on it. But expensive to buy for one hammer. This will probably do about two. What you can also use is the Bosch grease that comes in the service kits. That's this number here, 1615430-014. Same number in all these, it's just the last three digits is different. So like the oil is 019, this here big tube is 015. This is very similar, but it's a little bit thicker. This is what will be coming out of the factory with, this here yellow stuff. But it's nearly identical to that there, just a little bit heavier. Or, if you can't get that, you can also use Makita grease. This number here, 181490-7. That there you could probably get on Amazon. It comes in about a 30ml tube, but if you're doing this in a Bosch hammer, you need 90ml, you need 3 of them. These ones, 45ml, you're going to need 2, or if you're doing a couple of hammers, those are 225. You get more than 2 hammers out of this here. So there are the greases that you can use, and that's the one I'm going to be using in this one. To start, I always put this gear grease on first because it's heavier, gives a good seal, and it doesn't make as much of a mess as you're initially getting it built. That's why I use it anyway. But it's not essential. You can just use the other stuff. That's them two ready. And I'll use that there on the needle bearings and the gear as well. I'll just stick the needle bearings on now actually. And then the rest I'll give it an initial wee grease as I'm building it. Just with a paintbrush and this white grease, this white heavy Bosch grease. Just to make sure everything's coated as it's going on. So get a bit on there. That'll coat them needle bearings. Get a bit in that armature. This just guarantees that nothing's running dry as it initially starts up. And just a little bit in the bottom, just to stick on that washer so it doesn't drop out as you're dropping it in here. Just press that on. That's us ready to roll. Getting too far ahead of myself. Don't put that in yet. Piston in first. Drop that in. Set it on top. Then you can put on the hammer pipe. Stand the piston up the head so you can get it in. Just line her up with the piston, make sure the head's going on, and slide her down. And get a bit of extra grease down along the side. And these have to be one of the easiest hammers to work on. They're nice and simple inside. They're well laid out. Down here too. There's an actual striker bolt that's actually hitting your chisel. And your hammer striker then, your hammer weight, is actually got on the side of that. So that's that ready. This can go on after. The other thing I will actually change is this here damper O-ring here, this big thick one. Probably not gone, but just in case, unless there's a contributing factor, I'll just change it. But mainly because I have absolutely loads of them and it costs nothing to throw it on. So just throw one of them on as well. Now to get the top on, this takes about 90ml of grease. There's a 60ml tube and it's filled all the way up, so there's about 70 in this. And I've already put on some of the heavier grease and a little bit of this already. So that's about 80 or 90. And then a little bit more for luck. That'll guarantee she has good compression, she doesn't dry out. Now these come in the service kit as well, these screws, but generally not really necessary. Can reuse them, but do top up the Loctite that's on them. That's probably why I have so many of those other big thick O-rings. The boys who used to do the service before me was either ordering in too many or not putting in new ones out of the service kit, because there's a whole box of them out there. Now, I'm also just reusing this felt sleeve because it's not even covered in oil yet. And that's on then. Slide on your cover. Not much point in putting that in yet, until we have the actual hammer on. Slide that on. Should be a nice snug fit now. Then put these on. That goes on top, and that goes on top of it. And your actual SDS head then sits on top. And again, put a Loctite on these, because it is still a hammer. The vibrations, they can't come loose. Lastly, the rear handle back on. And that should get this hammering properly again. One missing from there. Mines aren't Torx, they're actually Phillips heads. And then these two are also missing. These are M6x30s. Now, we'll see how that runs now. Sound a little bit laboured to start, until it gets the grease moving around. Once it actually gets spun around a little bit, it'll run freer then. That's one of the reasons why I don't use the actual gear grease for these here hammers only. They actually, in the breakdown diagram, the lubrication instruction does say it has the 015 grease. That's the proper stuff for it. This will work on this hammer. It will actually give very good compression and last a long time if it's getting regular use. Not a problem there, but it's a lot thicker and a lot harder on the motor to get it moving around. So if you use the heavier gear grease in this to service it, it's cheaper to buy as well, about half the price. Whenever you switch it on like that, you'll hear it struggle, and it'll take a lot longer to get up and running properly because that grease is that thick. The motor has to struggle to get it moving around. So if you're dealing with a machine that's seen a lot of work and it's old, you don't know how good the motor is, that extra strain could just put it over the edge and cause the motor to burn out a lot quicker than what it should. So you generally shouldn't really use it. It's a brand new machine and it's getting a lot of work. Fair enough, you could use it if it's going to get heated up and be used properly, but that one is the one you really want to be using with this thing. Allow this machine to last an awful lot longer and less stress on the motor. Now, give us a test. Yep, that's it. That's her. That's what the problem was. So she's actually hitting properly now, and she's not making that very hard, violent slap back into your hand. A lot easier to use now. So that's her. If you have one of these 11Es and it's doing that, you can feel a very, very sharp shock back into your hand from the hammer striking. Get her serviced. It's probably the O-ring's gone, and just change that big washer up the top as well, just in case that's anything to do with it. It just goes to show as well, mightn't have got much use, but these things are generally just left in a van. The van's driving around and knocking about. These are just getting scraped against all bits and pieces on the van, the concrete. They get all scuffed and damaged. They never look fresh for too long. So when they're 15 years old and they haven't done any work, but they're still lying in a van somewhere, they still end up looking the exact same way. So that hasn't done much, but it doesn't look like it. But that's it. As always, folks, thanks for watching the videos. If you're liking them, give us a wee like and a follow down below. If there's any questions on them, drop us a wee comment as well. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching.